This week, I have a bunch of Maliss tech choices for you to get ahead on. So this week, I don't have much of a locals report because I've been feeling kind of sick all week, and I wasn't really able to put my best into the tournaments I played at. But I do have a lot of cool tech choices that I wanted to highlight for you guys, and after that, I'll talk a little bit about the locals I did play and how my list changed during the week. So starting off here, we have Salesman. This is really one of the best cards in the game at dealing with single targets, which is very relevant at the moment when people are making a card as strong as Detonator on their end boards. This card will really solo pure Ryziel decks and can deal with other problem cards such as Murakamo against Mitsu or Bomber Dragon going second against Maliss, since you probably won't be making it as the Maliss player going second. This card was like really put on initially by Sako in kind of the public sphere. I've been on this card for a while. I'm a big fan of this card. I think like the first ever event I went to after Malice released, I was citing this card because I was like, this card is crazy against Detonator. Up next we have Lullaby of Obedience. Mostly remember this card being used during Snake Eye format, where PAX team at the 3v3 in Vegas kind of popularized it and brought it back into the light. I'm a huge fan of this card, and I think it's an incredible choice for the Malice Mirror. You can call starters, extenders like Backup or March Hare, or even call Lancia as like a way to skip your opponent's turn in addition to your end board, or if they resolve Lancia against you, you can call it and try and get your turn back. The downside is obviously paying 2,000 life points can hurt in a deck that does pay so much life, but it's really like almost 100% of the time it's worth it. Up next, we have spell card Monster Reborn. This has seen a bit of popularity both in the OCG and at YCS Providence. Shout out to Lucas Hennigan, Philadelphia legend. People were playing this in a similar manner to what I was saying about Lullaby. However, this card has a bit more utility going second too, as it can be used as a way to steal both Malice names and generic bodies from your opponent's graveyard, as well as a disruption. With the trade-off being you can't use the summoned monster's effects the turn it's revived. This can also be used to steal Lancias from your opponent as well, where in Malice, in the mirror, if they Lancia you, you can Spellcard Monster Reborn it and just leave it on your field, and then on your opponent's turn, you can just activate the Lancia. This is something I've actually been testing a bit recently, and it's actually been growing on me, so I'd like to try it again in a locals where I'm feeling a bit better, and I'm able to like pay more attention to the game. After that, we have Solemn Morning. This has actually been picking up a bit on DB and in topping lists from what I've been seeing, but I've been a big fan of Warning for a while now. Overstrike, which has kind of been the go-to, like going first card. This card being able to stop Malice traps, as well as the Mitsu ritual spells, and cards like Node and Ice, as well as stopping like all the inherent link summons and stuff, is very strong, and I really think this card is going to pick up in popularity a lot and be one of the like defining cards of the format. Here we have Songs of the Dominators. This is another card that people have been toying around with as a thrust target in Malice. For those of you who don't know what this card says, it reads, if you have no monsters in your graveyard, you can activate this card from your hand. When your opponent activates a monster effect on field, negate that effect. Then if you have a trap in your graveyard, you can add one Dominus card from your deck to your hand. The rest of the effect text is not really that relevant. Basically what you can do as a thrust target is thrust for Songs of the Dominators, set it, and then when your opponent activates a monster effect, flip it, negate that effect, and then search for Impulse, which is obviously like crazy, because your deck does play traps, so it will have traps in graveyard. This card does kind of lose to Ash, but you also have to consider that Thrust itself loses to Ash, so the only difference is if your opponent draws Ash as their 6th card for turn, which is like kind of hard to play around, so you have to accept those. And then for the last card of this like little section here of cards that I think like are seeing a bit of play, we have Mistaken Arrest. This is just like a crazy floodgate against Mitsu and Ryziel opponents. It's not bad against Malice, but I personally wouldn't put it in. It's basically Droll on steroids, and unless they open like the perfect hand that can play through Arrest, then it will just like turn skip then, and that hand will usually lose to like anything else. Ash, Impulse, Imperm, any of your half-board pieces, they probably, like, Mistaken Arrest is crazy. Next for the kind of less talked about choices, we have Shared Ride, which is basically like the opposite of Mistaken Arrest, where every time your opponent adds, you get to draw a card. And this is kind of like the closest thing we have to a max C after you get to resolve your combo. And it applies a lot of pressure to your opponent, because you could be drawing into like Ash Blossom, Impulse, just like additional ways to stop your opponent from playing. And in a format where a lot of the best decks are weak to Droll, I think this card is a really underexplored option. Um, Up next, we have our good friend Shifter here. Not much to say about Shifter. This card is still crazy. Turn skips a lot of decks besides like Maliss and Pure Mitsu. I think it's another blowout that, just like the Charm User and Droll, equalizes the game going second and really stops your opponent, and you can just end the game on turn 3. And then lastly, we have some like these cards here that I think are like really underexplored, and I think might be like tech choices that'll be interesting to see as the format develops. So starting off, we have Microcoder and Signet Conflict. I think these two cards are a way to help strengthen your end board as a thing that you can search off backup if you don't need like Wizard or a Malice target. Conflict is an insane counter trap that turns off cards for multiple turns and banishes the negated card. And even if you're in like a half board situation and Conflict is live, you're probably getting yourself another turn just off Conflict alone. Up next, we have Signet Backdoor. This could be included with the Microcoder and Conflict, as it's a valid target to search off Microcoder, but I really think you could also just play 3 Signet Backdoor on their own. If you're unfamiliar with this card, it says target one Cyberse monster you control, banish it, and if you do, add one Cyberse monster from your deck to your hand whose attack is lower than that monster's original attack. During your next standby phase, return that monster banished by this card's effect to the field, and it can attack directly that turn. While it seems like this card has a lot of synergy with Malice, it wasn't initially played because the best normal summon in the deck is Dormouse, and Dormouse has the lowest attack of the original 3 names. So if you want to search off of it, you would have to play other Cyber teams that were kind of bricky. Now with the addition of March Air, you always have a Malice monster that has less attack than any of the Malice normal summons, as well as any Link monster that you may want to dodge Impermon. This card also increases the amount of 2-card combo, since now you can go like normal cat, activate this, search for the March Hare, and then revive the cat, and you can even go cat, draw 2, add the March Hare back. And you can also use this to play under Lancia, since if it's the main phase, you can normal a guy, and if they chain Lancia, you can chain backdoor and get a search off of it. Lastly, for the main side deck options, we have this little 3-card package of iConnect and the 2 math mech names, Sigma and Circular. I'm sure at this point most of us know what Sigma and Circular do, but the reason they really work in the deck now is because of this spell called iConnect, which says reveal one Cyberse monster in your hand, apply this effect based off the attribute. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, except for Cyberse monsters. Dark, special summon the revealed monster, and if you do, add one level 4 lower non-dark Cyberse monster from your deck to your hand. Other, shuffle the revealed monster into the deck, and if you do, add one Agnoster monster with a different attribute from your deck to your hand. And then you can only activate one per turn. Basically, what iConnect translates to is either a free summon plus 2 bodies by revealing a Dark Cyberse from your hand, which is most of your deck, and then so specialing that, and then adding Circular, and then Circular dump Sigma, and that's 3 bodies right there. Or a way to search for backup and Wizard in a pinch and get access to the Malice names. The first time I saw this was in a list by Daniel Shogun in a top 8 regional list, and I thought it'd be worth highlighting it here because I think this is a really cool little combo, and it's something I definitely want to try out some more. Moving on from main deck cards to the extra deck, I'm going to start with Transcode and Heat Soul. I'm putting these two together because I think they're kind of the same purpose. I think they're a really nice option to use as half boards under Lancia that are pretty easy to get to with just backup and like maybe a Malice name or something. And I like them more than Bomber Pass. And if you have like a Malice name and backup, then you can even make these in addition to Ransom plus Spell if your opponent like only has the Lancia. These are also bodies that can be summoned off the Allied Code Revive that are nice options to have over the Whitebinder on field, in my opinion, especially Transcode, which can just like revive Whitebinder the next turn, which is crazy, and just like immediate soul charge turn 3. And also Transcode has the nice effect where monsters that point to it can't be targeted. So that can be nice pointing to the Allied Code so it just doesn't get impermed or something, like first action. After those two, we have Terahertz making his return. This was something that they were doing a lot in the OCG that didn't really catch on here, but I think with the release of Allied Code, Terahertz actually got a lot better because now Terahertz doesn't have to be on the field and lose to every form of interaction ever for the Disave Worm negate to be live, because now the Terahertz can be used, or the Allied Code can be used as the body for the Disave Worm. Up next, we have Zerorus and Trisbania. Both of these fill a similar role to Bomber Dragon, in my opinion, but could situationally be better. Trisbania is especially worth noting because it blows up spells and traps as well. And also, if your opponent gets to make the Cyber's Wicked, then Bomber Dragon doesn't really do anything. So Trisbania and Reborn as banishing cards can be pretty nice. And lastly here we have Trigate Wizard. I was testing Trigate a lot really early on when we saw the Japanese release of the new Maliss and Agnister cards, and there's a lot of lines that can get you to an allied code plus Trigate plus 2 monsters pointing to both of them. And I think people weren't exploring it as much. The thing is, like, Trigate is kind of win more, but in a format that's so high powered, like this one with like Maliss and Mitsu able to do a lot, Trigate is like having the additional Omni plus Banish is a very strong thing in my opinion. Trigate is also not like something that can be super polyed away because it's an Earth, so your opponent would have to be playing like really specific super poly targets for Malice, which some people are doing, but not as many as people who are just playing like Muddragon Garua. So here's the list I played during the week. It's almost the exact same list at the list I showed at the end of last week's video, where I talked about wanting to play Bell instead of Nib, moving a Perulia to the side because I felt like I had too many Charmies in main, and a couple of the other things I talked about at the end of last week's video. I pretty much played that list card for card. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I was feeling kind of sick all week, so I really didn't get the best testing in. It's kind of unfortunate, but you know, you can't really control these things. But I do have a little bit of insight from the locals I did play at, even though I wasn't really able to put my best into it. Starting off, the big change I made during the week was taking out Bomber Dragon. I felt like every time I summoned that card, I was losing the game. Maybe I'm not using it in the right situations. Maybe you're only supposed to be using it as like a turn 3 kind of thing to clear boards. But I felt like I was seeing a lot of people end on it during the YCS. Like I had noticed Aditya and Ryan Yu both like summoned it as like their last play when they got hit with Lancia or Charmies or something. And that's what I was been doing, but I felt like every time I was in that situation, I had just like wasted, like I had given them an extra card for no reason, or it was just so easy for them to exploit in all those situations that I just took it out. Like I didn't even want it to be on my mind to summon it at this point. So I just put back in the Almirage if for situations where I have too many normal summons. I talked about this at the end of the last video too, or not too many normal summons, too many hand traps. Sorry. But I talked about this at the end of the last video too, how I wanted to take out a card for Bomber Dragon if I felt like I wasn't getting much use out of it. And I really I feel like I gave it a fair shot, like 2 weeks of just playing it, and it just every time it felt really bad for me. That's not to say that you'll have the same results I did. This is just like my preparation, my testing, how I'm feeling, getting ready to go to nationals. So taking out Bomber Dragon. Right now, Almirage is back in. I do want to try some of the things I talked about in the video earlier, and I will probably switch up midway through the week. And at the end of next week's video, I'll talk about if I tried any of those choices and how I felt about them. Keeping things pretty standard right now, just putting back in the Almirage. Still had never summoned early, but I still am not like fully giving up on it. Just because I know one time I'm going to get Chaos Huntered, and I'm going to regret not having something to deal with it. And I'm not a fan of Cerberus because a smart player will play around Cerberus, but it'll be a lot harder for them to play around early and Bomber Dragon. I think about changes I want to make going into next week. In preparation for those week's locals, I'm going to try and get to a couple more. Hopefully, I'm feeling a little better and I'm able to like put my mind fully in the game. Um, I think Droll's going to go back in the main. There's a lot of Mitsurugi in Philly, at least at the locals I've been going to and I've been noticing. And I think Droll is like it's coming up a lot more than some of the other cards. I think I'm gonna move the talent to the side again and maybe even take it out depending on like again I want to try some of the cards I talked about earlier in this video. So trying some of those as side options like Sales Banner, Spell Card Monster Reborn, or Lullaby. Um, one of those options. So I could see myself taking the talent out for one of those and just leaving the called by. But at the same time, talent is like, in my opinion, one of the three best cards of the format right now. I think it's like Impulse, Habakiri, and talent are like the big three. And if your deck isn't playing one of those, it's probably like I don't know. You should be playing at least one. Um, so yeah, I think the Droll will go back in the main, and the talent will go to the side. I think I'm going to take out the Bell or the Bestials too, or at least. Um, Bell is I'm still a huge believer in Bell, but I want to try other cards, and I think Bell is like the most cuttable hand trap I have in my deck. I'm really, really interested in the 3-card Math Mech package I showed earlier in the video with the Eye Connect. So I really want to try that, and it might be at the sacrifice of Bell. Um, the Bestials also haven't come up like still like I think during my games this week, I again just like only use them as extenders like once or twice. They're really not like doing as much as I thought they would, and I can definitely see myself taking them out. And with taking them out, I think I'm going to take Phantasme out too. The main reason I was playing the Phantasme was the synergy between Phantasme and Magnamut, and without one, like Phantasme feels like it could just be a better card in the side. Um, like again, trying some of those cards I talked about earlier in the video. Perulia the third could go back in the main just because of the amount of hand traps and stuff I'm taking out of the deck. I want to have like more like if I'm not playing more hand traps with different names, then I want like more Charmies in main so I can draw into hand traps at least is kind of the way I'm thinking about it. Endlessly, I think I'm just gonna pick two of the things I talked about earlier in this video, maybe like something I could put in the main deck, something I could put in the side deck, or something I could put in the side, something I could put in the extra. Trying two of those out and reporting back so you guys like the people who are following along can see what I think of those and I'm not just like telling you something that I wouldn't play myself. And if I find out that something I said in the this week's video sucks, I'll come here next week and say this sucked. Um I don't want to like set you guys up for failure because I care just as much as I do well at Nats as, I want everybody else who watches to do well at Nats. Now, looking forward, besides Nats, which is like obviously the central point of this series, we have the Philly Regional at the end of this month, which is like one of the biggest regionals if in the country, if not the biggest. It routinely gets over 600 people. I think a lot of people are going to pop out for this one because it is the one for Alliance Insight, which is like a really big set, and a lot of things came out of the set. I know like the Philly Regional is like bigger than some YCSs in like South America and stuff. So I do really want to try and do my best at that. I have gotten like a top there once, depending on if you count regional tops or whatever. Try and do well at that event, especially since it's like my home regional. As somebody who lives in Philly, always like to do well there. But other than that, I don't know if I'll be going to another like really big event from now until Nats. Maybe traveling to some smaller regionals within the like East Coast area. But other than that, it really is just Nats, and the Philly regional might be the only event that I get to play in this current format since I didn't go to the YCS. Because Nats will be 2 more sets will be released. Duelist Advance and the Battles Legend set with the Punk cards and the Orcus cards. So the format could be completely different by the time Nats comes around. So I'm really looking forward to Philly Regional. I'll show my list that I'm planning to bring to it the week before, and then it's always on a Saturday. So on Sunday I'll come back with a report and maybe a deck profile if I did well enough. But either way, I'll be talking about my deck at the event and how I think it did and what I would have changed if anything. But other than that, thanks for joining me for part 2. I was really happy with the reception on Facebook and comments and like how part 1 did. Even though it's very small, it still is like really means a lot to see just how well people are receiving my opinion and stuff. Because I don't really have like I've never been to a YCS. I don't have results like other people do. So it's just cool to see that people care what I have to say about a deck that I care so much about. Um, but yeah, see you guys next week for the 3rd episode. I think during the middle of the week, I'll talk about what that episode will be about. And yeah, have a good one.